Well, hi, it's David Gomm in the Stained Glass Studio. You know, a few years ago we did an article on how to repair a leaded panel. And we have a whole bunch of pictures that went along with that article, and we thought you'd be interested in seeing those in video form. So here we go. This is on how to repair a leaded panel. Now, you may remember that in our studio we only do copper foil construction. But somebody called upon us, a client called and asked us if we could repair a window in their home. And it didn't have much damage. The window had a broken piece of glass, and we'd need to take it from their home, bring it to our shop, and then reinstall it in their entryway. So the wood that held the window in place had been assembled with 45-degree miters, and so that meant I had to take the nails out, but they were very thin, tiny nails, pin nails that were, the size of like a staple, a small paper type staple. And so because I had a putty knife with me, I was able to just put that in and drive it loose by popping it apart. And so then once all the pins were cut, I was able to carefully remove the wood from the framework. Now, the leaded panel was very tight in the framework, which is rare. And I had to gently work the panel loose so as not to break it. The installation had one piece of tempered glass on the outside of the door frame, and then the art glass. And really, that's why the art glass had gotten broken, is because it got hit from the inside by the kids playing with a ball. Now, in our studio, we insulate window units so that there's tempered glass on either side of the art glass, just to protect both the inside and outside. Now, because the tempered glass was still in place, I simply replaced the wood pieces back in the frame until the reinstall took place. Normally we put a piece of cardboard or plastic in the opening while it awaits replacement. So when I got the window back to the studio, the first thing I did was trace the outline of the panel. I knew that since this window was so tight, I had to be absolutely sure that it didn't grow on me in the repair process. I heated the joints of solder and used pliers and rocked the outer bar back and forth until the outside strip of zinc came loose from the panel. And now, using a razor blade knife, I loosened the cement joint between the lead and the glass so I could remove the glass pieces. And once the cement was loose from the glass, I was able to desolder the joints and work the lead free from the glass. Next, I applied clear tape to both the broken sides of glass so that as I eased it out of the panel, it would stay in one piece, which I could then use as a pattern for the new replacement glass. Once I had the cement and glass loose from each other, I applied gentle pressure on the glass and spread it apart so it was easy to remove from the panel. I used the removed piece of glass as a template, like I said, and since the glass was a close match but not quite perfect, I replaced both of the pieces so that they both looked the same. Your eye would notice the difference if only one of the pieces was replaced, but you couldn't see the small difference since both of them were replaced. Next, I nailed down the panel on the pattern that I had traced earlier so I could make the window stay the same size. And then I slid both of the replacement pieces of glass into the lead king. And I tapped them gently into place. I used gentle pressure from a glass hammer, and then I nailed the outside lead in place, making sure that the glass was tight and inside the lines of the pattern. So up until this step, The techniques that I've used would be used for both either the copper foil method or the lead method. But from now on, I'm going to focus on the copper foil methods. So the next thing I did was to place a strip of copper foil along the bottom of the panel so there would be something to solder to. And we could have used lead cane, but the cane we had in stock didn't match the original lead. And nowadays we just don't carry any cane at all. I foiled the bottom 3 beveled pieces with copper foil, getting ready to solder the panel, and I cut a piece of zinc to fit the panel and nailed it in place, making sure that the panel still fit inside the penciled in pattern. I carefully soldered the joints at the bottom of the panel, using care to only heat the lead that was being attached just enough to solder to, trying to avoid melting the lead cane. When the solder lines were complete, they were a little bit too shiny. So they didn't match the original window, so I cleaned it with an ammonia-based cleaner, which darkened it. You know, it's probably a store brand of Windex. And then I added a dilute black patina to knock the color down. And after polishing and waxing the window, it matched the original putty well. When we went back to the client's home for the install, Jeannie wiped the window down for a final cleaning to get rid of any dust and smudges, and I removed the molding that was in temporarily and a couple of nails from the framework, and then I followed Jeannie's example and polished the inside of the tempered glass to get rid of dust. And I used my putty knife as a lever to center the window in the opening. And then I applied a small bead of silicone caulk around the entire framework. And I gently tapped the wood back in place. And now, since I wasn't going to nail the trim back in place, I forced a stick in the opening between the molding so that it'd be held tightly while the silicone dried. And the silicone will form a good enough bond to hold both the window and the molding in place. So that was kind of a cheat. And there you have it. That was all the steps of replacing that piece, and I think it looked pretty good. Well, thanks for joining us on this video, and hope to see you again in the stained glass studio.